Welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. We're back for another Bad Runner's Take. These are getting more and more fun. There's a lot more laughter happening in like the pre-show and thinking through what we're going to do. Who do we want to become as hosts of this show? How do we want to steward, thinking through some of these things? Because we're not going to make friends with this. We might make some fans, but we're not, and we might make some new friends, but we might lose some, brand relationships and stuff like that. But there's some stuff that we just feel like needs to be said, so we're going to say it. Borderlands, somehow we're still not learning. Borderlands, we still suck at running. All right, there's a thing happening here at the podcast, and like I've stated it on the first episode of this year, that I'm moving from a me to we. A lot of times we build these podcasters build things, brand builders build things around themselves, and that's normal, and I'm doing that here, but that's ultimately not my goal. I never really intended to be the guy in front of the camera for Borderlands, but I also enjoy it. I have life as a musician. I like being on stage, all that sort of stuff. It makes sense. So a lot of what Borderlands had been built to be was me. And I would think up a song, and I'd write the song, and I'd play the song, and it would be silly, and it'd be self-deprecating, and be all these sorts of things. But as we push me out of the way and bring we into the picture, and one of those is Brian Peterson, who joins me for Bad Runner's Take, now host of Wolfie's World, is this thing is going to more start to reflect the community and less of me. When I do my episodes, it'll be that entry song that you just heard. But I'm going to start to build music around the we instead of the me. And in that, I'm hoping to 10x the audience size over the next 12 months. And I'm putting that out there. Aim small, miss small. If I aim for 10 and I get 9, I'm going to be stoked for that. If I aim for 10 and get 20, awesome. If I aim for 10 and get 2, I'm not going to be stoked, but that's the trajectory. That's where we're going. And this thing that Brian and I do together has been a crowd favorite. And today I think will be one of the great ones if we handle it well. In today's episode of Bad Runner's Take. So glad you're here. Remember, January 18th, this is like a week away. I'm going to be in Salt Lake with Billy Yang, a group run and a live podcast recording with him. Go to borderlands.cc. That's where all the action is now. It's a Bad Runner's Take. It's a Bad Runner's Take. It's a Bad Runner's Take. He's the Kipchoge of running back. All right, Ryan. Welcome.
Yes, sir. That intro never gets old, man. That's the whole reason I wanted to come onto this podcast, was just so I could hear that every time we get together. I need to. There's going to be some stuff I'm going to do to upgrade it, mainly because I'm a tinkerer and I can never leave things alone. But I'm, as I said in that intro, I'm moving toward building all of like the music assets and all the things around it in a way that all the personalities that I hope come together. And right now it's you and me, but there'll be more over time. I hope come into it, and it feels like, hey, all this music and the sound represents us, and then you'll have music and sounds that represent you when you do Wolfie's World, and whoever else joins us for them, and then me, my stuff. So we're going somewhere. We'll see if we actually get there. Yeah, I love that. In fact, yeah, and what I wanted to point out and kind of just highlight and credit to your vision there is that you're adding different personalities and voices based on kind of their unique talents and skill sets. You're not limiting it to just your friend group, which is what I see is all too common in the current podcast space, is that you really just see friends get brought onto the pod, and that's how they build out their complementary voices. But you're looking talent first, and then obviously connecting on personal levels. So yeah, I think it's a great differentiation between other podcasts.
Yeah, thank you. And I see like such a cool, it was like this with coffee in Salt Lake City when I'd started La Barba. There was not specialty coffee yet in Salt Lake in 2012. That was aiming to scale. And so it's like, you're kind of in this wild west of like, hey, you can look around in other industries. You can look, and for coffee, you could look in Portland and what was happening in Portland, what was happening in California, what was happening in, Chicago and North Carolina. And you could start to pull those things in. Well, trail running is in that space now where there's lots of cool stuff happening in other industries or adjacent industries that there's still so much room to bring that stuff in. And like you said, I want to focus on like being the absolute best, not just, having the homies come in. But my hope is that the best come in and then we all become homies.
Exactly.
That's the dream.
Yeah, and that's what's happened here. So yeah, right on, man.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got going on?
Yeah, okay. Today's funny, in my opinion. I think it's interesting. I think it's funny because it's, funny because it's true. Every joke, jokes are only funny in as much as they have truth tied to them. And here we're looking at race prices today, and we're going to try and break race prices down. We're going in blind. Because I haven't been signing up for races this year. I don't know how much races are really costing. I know roughly, but we're going to look at different races on the spot. We're just going to spout them out, look them up on the internet, and then we're going to plug them into a calculation that you came up with, and we're going to standardize race prices and see where the industry is at, and then we're going to compare it, to some other things, other races, maybe other races around the world, and talk about race prices, talk about ultra sign up, run sign up, their place in race pricing and how they impact it, and then chat a little bit about LAS and take some user calls. So let's open this up. Where do you think we have this like wide swath of stuff that we could talk about? What's our starting line? Where should we start here?
Yeah, I think we always hear the hockey stick growth rate for the amount of participants in the sport. And I think what, probably everybody's a little bit shy who's, got some business ties to the sport growth is how much the cost of entry fees are also growing on the hockey stick scale.
Yeah.
At least the ones that, I've got visibility to, so Aravaipa being in my backyard, that's kind of the race schedule and fees that I'm more familiar with, but I still look and see kind of what your major races are costing, like Western States, UTMB. And so that's what we started kind of riffing on, and then comparing it really to a more established entry fee schedule, which is the road marathoning scene, right? They've got their 7 majors, they've got your local feeder marathon races. And so it's more well established. I think the, cost per mile breakdown for a road marathon, and just kind of comparing that to where we're at right now in ultra.
Yeah. Okay. So like the higher up level from this and looking at race prices is, there's a subset of people who look at this and say, hey, why do you even need a race to run 100 miles? Like, why don't you just go run 100 miles? Well, for me, it's, I love the community. I love being out in it. It's the almost the exclusive time that I run with somebody, because I run alone so much. And I like that. I like that rhythm of train alone, race together. That's really energizing to me. I love getting out and seeing the community. It's also why I'm not super connected to my Salt Lake community, because I don't go on the group runs that often or ever. So then I feel connected on the race level. But because so many people are that way, they're running with groups and then they enjoy the race. Races are in this interesting place where, sure, there's inflation, costs are rising. But I think what we're going to see here and be shocked by is just how much races have gone up. And I think if you look at Ironman, their history and how much prices have gone up there, that races know, and I'm a race director of a small race, there's a high willingness to pay. But I think also what I'm going to enjoy seeing is my cost per mile, which I'm going to break that down here in just a second. That was your idea. Cost per mile in my race, we tried to keep it low because we're trying to get first-time trail runners and racers from downtown Salt Lake City and surrounding neighborhoods to race for the first time. So we're trying to keep prices low. Race directors have a captive audience. What are you going to do? If you want to run Javelina, if you want to run Eastern States, No Business 100, any iconic race around America, they know they've got your attention, and that within reason, they're selling out. They know that price can keep going up and up and up. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. That's just an observation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, as we get to dive into it, I think, I pick on Javelina a lot because, again, it's a race it's in my backyard, but it's also got a lot of valid reasons to be picked on. There's a lot of loose threads that are easy to pull on. And once you pull on one, you know how it goes, right? The whole sweater gets deconstructed. So, right now I looked at it, the New Year's, when the entry fees or the entry list sign up went live, right? So like everybody jumped in right at New Year's to get their spot without having to jump on the wait list. And I walked through the checkout, and it was like $615 after taxes and the ultra sign up fee and one parking spot. So if I wanted to pay to have a more preferred parking and be able to camp in my car, that was an extra $65. So I think the race itself worked out to be like $540 or 500, something in that range, right? 525,
okay.
540, 615 out the door just to sign up and park your car.
I mean, that's insane, only in as much as we know what those prices were 4 years ago, 6 years ago. So demand's going up. Again, good. That's great. All right. What race do we want to choose as our standard bearer? What's our first race? And so what we're going to do is we've said it a few times, but cost per mile. Brian sent this to me in a text like, hey, there was a race one time we were talking about, and I was like, hey, check out the price of this race. And you did the math, like, look, that's, $5 per mile. I thought, oh my God, that's a great way to standardize how we're thinking about race costs. So what we're just establishing is how much does it cost per mile to run this race when it purely based on registration fee, not travel, not camping, all of that. So what's like the average American race to you? I might say Wasatch feels like average American, not new American, maybe it's been around, but I don't know. What do you think should be our standard bearer?
Yep. Yeah. I think everybody within the region is going to have one that I think resonates with them. Is kind of what their, what do you want to call it? Like middle class as far as like, visibility and attendance would be. So like in California, something like AC 100, or even that might be too niche, maybe like San Diego 100. Those are SoCal races that are pretty big deals and regionally important. And so then,
let's do that one. I like the way you're thinking about that, like that sort of like middle class reference. Let me look up San Diego 100. It also allows us to give a shout out to some new races because let's do the same ones. Register 381.57. Okay, important to note that Ultra Signup is now required to post the price you will see at checkout, which as a consumer I love, as a race director I don't, but that includes taxes and fees. So 381.57
is out the
for
door.
a 100-miler. What's that?
That's out the door.
Out the door. That's all things included.
Gotcha.
381.57 divided by 100. I should be able to do that in my head. I'm sorry. You don't ever do math in front of people. Okay. $3.81. That's our standard bearer.
Right.
I feel like that's pretty good for our purposes here. 381.75. Okay. So you already talked about Javelina, and you said 540.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I guess take the 615 minus like $65 that I put in there for the parking, and then that would be your fees out the door, basically.
Okay, so 550.
Roughly. Yeah.
All right, so you got 381 versus 550. Okay, so now we have probably our most expensive and a good middle of the road. Okay, so I think I'm curious about my race. Like I've never really totally thought about it. So Salt Lake Foothills 50K. I need to see what they're saying it is out the door right now for the 50K. Salt Lake Foothills Trail Race. And out the door right now for the 50K is $123.99. $123.99. $123.99 divided by 32. Oh, okay. 387. I'm 387. So if San Diego's 381, for now, we're going to call this like middle class pricing. Like
right.
My race is like for the middle class.
There you go.
All right. What else? Who else? This is fun. Let's build up some information here.
Yeah. So we can also compare kind of where does the 50K range price out at for, maybe like, what do you got? You got, in my area for Aravaipa, maybe something like Crown King, which is coming up. I don't know if registration will still be open for that.
Crown King Scramble?
Right.
Okay. 242 for a 50K. So 242 divided by 32. No. 756 per mile.
There you go, man. So it actually, it's actually,
No,
that's what I'm saying is there's nothing standardized yet in the sport because obviously everything's growing at such a rapid pace that nothing's really normalized yet. It's just, get what you can, right? And then if you start to see the entrance dwindle year over year, then you might think you got a price problem, right? But like when you contrast it to road marathoning, where it's been decades and more well established, you've got the 7 majors, I think, that set the premium price standard, and then you've got regional races that obviously are going to have to price themselves below that. Is my understanding of how that works. And I'm sure that like you probably don't see like half marathons pricing out per mile more than the full marathon distance at other places.
Yeah. Okay, Crown King is currently the winner of the highest cost per mile.
I mean,
kudos to them.
When you look European, then you've got to think about like, what are these like Sierras and all races or UTMB? I think we looked up UTMB before we got on, and it was shockingly affordable for all of its criticisms.
UTMB, 439 euros. I mean, $4.39. So this is shocking to me.
Right.
Is that UTMB, the big bad evil UTMB, 439 per mile, whereas Javelina was up there in the 6s, and then Crown King is in the 7s. I will say that, part of the knock on UTMB is that they're going to make everything more expensive, and they're going to corporatize so much stuff, and that's going to be reflected in the price. Now it's expensive to get to UTMB, but for people in Europe who I've talked to who aspire to run Javelina, it's the same, just going the other direction. That UTMB is closer to middle class pricing of our baseline of this 350. So that is really shocking, because I think UTMB could and should get increase that price.
Oh, absolutely.
For Americans at least. Right.
Because if we're following this comparison and contrast to road marathoning, obviously the Paris Marathon is going to have a course that's going to be beautiful, right? I mean, it's located in an area that's going to be gorgeous to run the streets through, right? And so Mont Blanc is the equivalent of that. Essentially, you're running, you're circumnavigating this mountain, right? And
stunning.
I mean, it's not lost in the nuance that you're going through 3 countries, right? I mean, just the whole explanation of what you're doing is very adventurous and life defining, right? Contrast that to Javelina, right? For all of its fun and whimsical, costumes and contrived little things that they do to make it a lively atmosphere, like Burning Man in the desert meets an ultra, right? It's still just 5 loops in a basic flat park. And so for it to be priced out more per mile than what we just explained UTMB represents, again, just it's kind of fascinating to see that's where we're at in the sport right now.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're not idiots. Like, there's a supply and demand thing happening here. They're charging that because they're getting it. My point is not so much that maybe this is my point. If from a pricing standpoint, if we're not going to beat up on Jamil for his high prices, we're going to be in awe. We're going to kind of laugh and chuckle him, but he's getting that. Then we shouldn't beat up UTMB. Like, I just feel like there's a intellectual dishonesty to the amount of shitting on UTMB that happens.
Yeah.
And this is just one data point of many. I know we can talk about a bunch of different streams of like, okay, how do they treat their employees, and what's company culture like, and how do they treat the mom and pop races around them? Those are different streams, but pricing considerably more reasonable than Arvipa. And so what I'm saying is, let's not start shitting on Arvipa. Let's actually shit less on UTMB.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's the best perspective to carry, and that's exactly what I think you and I were excited about discussing and kind of exploring. And again, who knows? Maybe others had never thought about it before, so it's something to kick around.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, this was new this year because California passed a law, and that's the ultra sign up. Because they have races in California, I guess, so they made it nationwide. I don't totally understand the thinking here. From a strategy standpoint, something like that, they're always going to be putting out a price thinking value. So you want to be able to advertise the lowest possible price and then get the demand and get people to want it, and then get them to check out and then layer the fees in. It's like, well, they're already committed. They're not going to bail because of those fees. There's not many players in the sign-up market. There are enough, I think, to keep us from the downsides to a monopoly between run sign-up and ultra sign-up. and some other small players. But what are the effects of a centralized sign up experience? You know, I mean, there's some obvious effects. Well, where does your head go?
Have you tried to go to a concert lately?
Don't even get me started on that. Like,
right. I mean, I think there's been, you know, that's my concern is that was immediately what I said to you was like, my God, like I haven't paid attention to Ultra Sign Up in a while, but I was shocked to see that, like, yeah, they were almost getting about a 5% chip off of the registration fees for Javelina. You know,
8. I think it's 8.
8%. There you go. So I mean, we're up to 8%, and if we're already saying that a race like Javelina is one of the most expensive and well attended, I mean, what's to say that 8% is not going to be 12% in 5 years? I mean, again, the sport is centralized around a few winners that are getting hand selected, and at the center of that is Aravaipa and Jamil. And so if Jamil and Ultra Sign Up have a strong relationship, and Aravaipa continues to scale across the country, which we're seeing from coast to coast, they're acquiring more races. Why wouldn't that only strengthen Ultra Sign Up's relationship to the race community? And then as they feel more emboldened, what's economics going to tell you do? That 8% is going to come up to 10 and 12. And before you know it, you're paying like $125 platform fee to sign up for a $600 race.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking, hey, it'd be fun to go see some concerts in Paris. You know, my willingness to pay is a little bit higher here because we're not going to be here forever. It's like, hey, I really want to have that experience. I want to go to one of these iconic places and see a band. And so I'm looking and I find some artists that I'm interested in, like knowing that I'm wildly interested in. And I see the ticket fee and I'm like, $40, great. And I go to checkout and it's like $85 at checkout, $45 worth of fees layered in. I went to see MXPX last year. The Stoke level was high. I got comped, thank goodness, but I bought a ticket for someone else. And my mind was blown at Ticketmaster, at Live Nation. Now in Ultra Sign Up's defense, like where they fall apart to not necessarily be like a Ticketmaster, is that there is a consciousness, at least around them, of wanting to build for this middle class runner and thinking about the middle class runner, but there's no limit. There's no limit on it, especially as they dominate the market. Run Sign Up does have a sliver of it, a meaningful sliver, to where it prevents the monopoly, but there's no like guardrails. I know that like the people who are behind it are good people. I genuinely like them, but there are no economic guardrails without competition. So I mean, I'm a free market capitalist to the max here. We need to keep those prices in check for the runners who I love the most. There needs to be more competition on that level. So, you know, I'm torn a little bit, but yeah, that price going up is also the platforms. And what's the value in the platforms? Just like a concert, MXPX didn't have to use Ticketmaster or Live Nation. They could have used someone else. So what's the value? Like, why does everyone have to go use these platforms? I don't know. I'm a mess in my head now. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I have gotten zero value out of Ultra Sign Up other than just it being the gatekeeper for me to sign up for the race. Like, you know, there's not been some sort of content or piece of consumable good that, you know, I've received from Ultra Sign Up as a result of using their platform. I despise their age rank and overall run performance ranking. It's
to be honest, I don't even understand it.
No, it's garbage. Just get rid of it because it's, you know, it's probably just a toxic, thing for most mid-pack runners that sit there and have to look at like a 55 or 60% ranking or something, right? Like, just stop. You don't even know what you're quantifying. If anything, it's just making you kind of feel a little shitty about yourself. So,
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the races, I mean, there's clearly some value, and someone who's using them, their customer service is great. They know that there has to be great customer service because, unlike concerts, you know, I could still just handle registration myself. But there is some trust. So then the runner who's used to it is like, okay, you're on Ultra Sign Up, great. I trust Ultra Sign Up if I need to get my refund, all that sort of stuff. But Ultra Sign Up doesn't handle the refund. It's just like eBay. They're a platform. However, I don't think Ultra Sign Up, except for extraordinary situations, has the ability to claw money back But if I have to refund a runner, I have to handle that independent of Ultra Signup.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, to your point, so here's the greatest hope for an Ultra Signup or a run signup is race discovery. And that's at the heart of what I'm building with Wilder. The app eventually is race discovery. I think it's crazy that no one has legitimately solved wanting to explore races a little bit different and a little bit better. But if my race is on Ultra Signup, it's more likely to be discovered because runners will go to Ultra Signup to look for races. I think that's probably the greatest value proposition of all. If a race is on there, it's more likely to be discovered by someone who's on the hunt for a race.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I was thinking about it too. Like if you got something like Javelina where it sells out and stuff, like, and you're starting to make comparisons to platforms like Ticketmaster, if only they could allow like you to transfer your bib, you could have, ticket scalpers. So you could be like, oh man, Javelina sold out. Well, let me go check, my local marketplace. Oh, I got a guy selling a bib to Javelina for $1,400, right? I mean,
this is actually, I like the levity with which you bring that up, but the inability to transfer a bib annoys the hell out of me.
Yeah. And I think
I don't know why we can't.
I think
liability.
It's a logistical nightmare for the RD, right? So if you allow bib transfers, I guess it creates maybe just some logistical nightmares for them, I guess. But I mean, you could still have a bib transfer cutoff date, right? I mean, I wouldn't imagine that, a large percentage of people are going to transfer bibs, but yeah, it would be a nice peace of mind to know that if you get into training and suffer an injury, you're out, man. Like they don't have a good refund or rollover policy at all.
Right. I mean, so Ultra Signup or Run Signup, if you're listening, like some tool in there that allows us to transfer it to our buddy. Like, okay, so if there's a liability thing before the transfer is complete, make sure they go through the liability process. If it's a logistical nightmare, like solve that. But as a race director, from a money standpoint, I like the person who bails after the refund because I get to keep their money, half of their money or all of it, depending on when they do. And I get to sell that spot to someone else.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the race directors. Maybe this is collusion.
Yeah, I think so.
So the transfer's in the runner's best interest. And maybe sometimes they want to fully forfeit it, but there's been time. I've ran a race before as Jeremy Cox. And so I'm running across the finish line, and it was a road marathon. And the announcer announces, and Jeremy Cox at 4 hours and 30 minutes. People do that all the time. So I don't know. Let's transfer. But okay. So the core thing here we're looking at is, with race prices, and all this is tied together because Ultra Signup has a clear impact on pricing or Run Signup as well. But this cost per mile thing, I think anytime you're looking at a race and to understand it, I don't know what you do with it. If you want to run the race, you just pay the price, but it's a great way to analyze where it's at. If we're saying like the baseline, the average race, the middle class race is 350, 360.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And it's just, again, my whole thing was like, it's hard in our sport to quantify or associate what it is about these certain races that are enabling prices to continue to rise, because it's bad for the sport overall, because then it trickles down, like you said, so that consumers in smaller regional races are paying more because the big guys are charging more. And so, a rising tide lifts all ships. Well,
yeah.
A rising Javelina price lifts all 100 milers across the nation.
Yeah, you're right. And so I wonder, like, okay, with my 50K or whatever, that pricing being lower, I was having this exchange with my buddies the other day who we put it on together. I was like, well, what is it? The Twisted Fork up in Park City is like almost double per mile as ours. And that's right in our neighborhood. It's 2 weeks after us. And sure, it's Park City, so there's some allure. Unless you're local, don't give me that. Park City has incredible trails. Park City itself is, Deer Valley-ish. If you're listening, you live in Park City, I love you, but you know what I'm talking about. So race right up the road, why don't I just raise my prices? If he's getting it up there, I should just raise my prices down there. And we have to have this like sort of clear thing in our marketing of like, hey, we're not a value race. We're not cutting corners, but we are very mindful that we want people to run the race at something that they could afford, especially if they're not looking to travel. And I get it. Finn's audience has a higher willingness to pay and they're going to travel and it's going to be more of an elite experience and all that sort of stuff. Elite meaning like probably marquee names there and the podium is going to be a very different experience than mine. but the double cost per mile, we should raise our prices. So I'm just saying, here's a real world example of what you're saying. Well, Javelina's getting $650. We should raise ours to $650.
Right.
And then Javelina raises theirs, and so there's the real world example.
Right. Yeah, but I trust that you would do something, with the added revenue, right? Like you've got the scholarship program that you're trying to use to get young runners in. And so if you were to increase, the entry fee, then it would be able to include more free entries for the next generation of runners, or for other, on-site amenities that are going to be highlighted and made aware to the public of like, hey, race fees went up, and here's what I've brought on to give you more value in return. And, I don't see that as like the industry norm right now. It's just, prices are up.
Yeah. We met with the city and we said, hey, you guys have been great to let us have these permits, and you're working with us. Like, what can we do to help you meet your values? And they said, well, we love that you're trying to bring people from around the country here. Our highest value is that people who live in downtown who've never been on these trails before would get out and run on these trails. And so we thought, like you're saying, so we came up with this, well, what if we could scholarship? We applied for a grant from the city, and we just found out we didn't get it, but Salt Lake City Marathon got it, who does like millions in revenue. They got a $5,000 grant, but we didn't. We're trying to scholarship high school cross-country kids to just come run the 10K. And we're not trying to scholarship the price of the entry. We're trying to scholarship our cost. So entry would be like $60, $70. We're trying to raise $25 per kid and then do the entire West High and entire East High cross-country teams and allow them to come run it. We want people from downtown to be up there. And we're fortunate. Like, we're not trying to be professional race directors. We're just trying to put on a really awesome experience in those mountains. And so, to your point, not everybody is that way. There's big organizations out there, some who are trying to supplement half their income, quarter of their income, 3/4, and that's just not us. So we can have more fun with that revenue.
Yeah, I love that. Having ran cross country in high school, it would have been fascinating to see, somebody partner with my coach and say, hey, have your team come out here. It'd be great, as a preseason or, postseason team building event. And if there's other race directors out there doing it, I'd love to hear about it, because I love seeing that.
Yeah, it's fun. So we'll see how it goes. But all right, so to close the loop on this, race cost, interesting. And I think that metric is a way to assess the race that you're looking to run, if you're looking to run for value. But if your heart's set on Javelina, don't even look at the price. Why even look at it?
Yeah, and I think that's the luxury that most people have, is that they look at something like 100-miler as like a bucket list thing, and bucket list things have no budget associated with them. So again, the sport kind of just has a great economic, value and proposition. It's, we pick apart Satisfy because they want to sell you a pair of shorts for $350, that you're going to run in for 2 or 3. I have pairs of shorts that I've had for 5 years that are still bulletproof, right? I'm going to go pay $615 to run Javelina once, but I'm going to complain and pick apart how asinine it is to pay $350 for a pair of shorts. Like, put thousands of miles into those shorts. So we're just such hypocrites in this sport, and
that's so good.
People, and we choose who to bully and kind of give the finger to in some really weird ways sometimes.
I have a friend who how people track how many miles they put on their shoes. He tracks how many miles he puts on his shorts.
Oh wow.
It's crazy. Look at the economics if you really are breaking it down. And if Satisfied stuff really does last that long, then your cost per run is really pretty special if you never feel the need to upgrade. So that's a great argument for that cost. But more so to your bigger point of our hypocrisy, we'll tear down a race price or pay the full race price without complaining about it, and then complain about shorts that we're not even going to buy. Why do we care what they cost if we're not even going to buy them?
Yeah. Anyway. Right on, man. I think we can pivot, there's still a lot of work to do and fun things to dive into on that one. But
yeah. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Laz Lake. This was just a short one, but the idea is, when you see this meteoric rise of Laz and the Barkley marathons, been around since 1986, and I think it's been within, I don't know, a few percent, almost exactly what it is now if you go there, outside of the demand to consume it as it's grown. But my take, and I do mean this as a compliment to Laz, whatever's happened with it is not because of Laz out pushing marketing. For me, and maybe others, it's different. Maybe for you it's different. I'd be curious the first time you heard about it, but mine was a friend of mine was edited the Barkley Marathons documentary that was on Netflix, The Race That Eats Its Young.
Yeah. The ginger runner.
So I watched that and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Mariana did that. That's amazing. And then it was like, oh my gosh, this thing is incredible. So all of that kind of built around it. But my point here is that, or my question here is what position does Laz deserve in the ultra running zeitgeist? Is he this amazing guru to be worshipped, or is he just some guy that stumbled, that is just doing his own thing in the mountains, and all of a sudden other people outside are, looking in the fishbowl, and he's not none the wiser, but who cares?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And if we take Laz at face value for who he is, or who we think he is, then I'd have to imagine that he wishes he could put that toothpaste back in the tube. I think he wishes probably he didn't sign up for allowing that first Netflix documentary, and then the subsequent one with Ethan and Gary Robbins. That certainly put it on a trajectory with everybody's consciousness and radar, right? It kind of transcended the sport in a sense, in the way that like Tara Dower just attacked the Appalachian Trail, right? So, yeah, and like we were trying to come up with some type of an analogy of, what the Barkley represented in its heyday, pre-documentary days, when nobody really knew much about it other than like true diehard fans within the sport. And then what it is today. And I came up with the Stanley thermos, the one that like the old school one, right? The one your dad would take you fishing, and like the lid was the cup that you drink, coffee through, right? These guys would go work on the skyscrapers that were getting built in Manhattan, right? It was a true piece of like, engineering equipment that these guys would utilize it for. And today, now the Stanley thermos is this sippy straw that you see, on the sides of, moms and little girls, and it's coveted for an entirely different reason. So,
but it's a perfect analogy because it's. I'm making an assumption here. I could be wrong. It's still those cups, even when they're pink with the straw and all that sort of stuff, that they're still built within a range of the original dream. And I even struggled to come up with that same word when talking about Laz, like within the original. Like he's still somewhat of that original thing. So I think about like the workers, building New York City, sitting high up on the skyscraper with their Stanley, whatever, with soup in it or something like that. And then all of a sudden it has evolved into this precious thing that every time a new color comes out, some sorority kid wants to have it. And I mean, no disrespect to like awesome photographers who go to document it, who've been on this podcast, both of them, Jacob Zuckerman and Drew Darby, and all of the hype around it. It's fun. And the Jasmine Paris, you even named it as one of the best things in trail running of all of last year, of her getting that finish. But on some levels, the personalities that have come in to have an impact on telling the story feel a little bit more like the new Stanley than the old Stanley. Meanwhile, Laz is still just Stanley. How am I doing?
Yeah, no, you're nailing it. And that's what I was going to say, is that I feel the most sympathy for the runners, because these runners who seek out Barkley and are looking to join this, enshrined list of finishers, they're not seeking out the media attention, right? Like I'm not speaking for them by any means, right? But like, I get the sense that they're almost begrudging to have to participate with the media event that then Laz has cultivated and, allowed to be on site, right? Like, and it's always why we pull our hair out, is like the Barkley gets put on this media schedule on the calendar of things that we have to tune into, but the athletes don't reciprocate because they don't want to. Jasmine Paris wants to disappear back into her farm life and do her thing and be private. And so like there's this conflict and tension every year with Barkley, because the runners don't want the media hype. But these, content creators are wanting to highlight Barkley for all of its grit and all of its, rawness in a sport that's like professionalizing, right? But like, it's not, I don't like it. It doesn't feel natural. It's not working in that sense. And I don't know. What do you think there?
Oh, my mind's now just racing. I wonder if this means that there are some people that deserved the Barkley experience, deserved to run it and have chosen not to because of what it has become. Right. So when I think of people in Salt Lake City who are running it, trying to run it before that documentary came out, Eric Storheim, the guy who won it or finished in the documentary. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. He's an icon in Salt Lake City running. He's won Hard Rock before. He finished 3 or 4 times now. That was attractive to them before it was ever marquee, and it's still attractive. But I wonder, where are those people going now? And we shouldn't be able to answer that because they're going to do something somewhere that doesn't have hype behind it.
Right. Yeah, I think for what the purpose of the topic was for, we've kind of nailed it in a sense of what we were trying to communicate. Yeah. At first it was kind of hard for me to get my head around exactly what I wanted to, be able to bring to the audience there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's that tension. It's just everybody kind of feels it as far as like, this wasn't a race that was supposed to be covered in the way that it is. And the lengths that these creators are having to go to try and get follow-up interviews and, put together something of a feature film or a documentary just kind of highlights how, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be a race that really needs or ever wanted the media attention. And then, because Laz courted it, right now it's, and it's in the lexicon. And so every year we've got to continue to feed it to the masses. But I wonder how many people are still really as fired up for it as they were when that first documentary hit Netflix. And then, I think the pinnacle was obviously the Gary Robbins attempts with his buddy, Ethan Newberry highlighting it.
Yeah. Well, that Stanley's perfect. Okay. It's time for calls. Call run or 649 649. That's 786 667 3649. All right, you guys have been calling a lot, and I'm so thankful and I'm so stoked. Let that jingle stick in your head. Keep calling. As usual, I'm not reviewing these much in advance because I want to have just like a gut response along with Brian here. When we hear these, eventually someday I'm going to have to, because some of you will start calling for his show, calling for me specifically, or calling for Bad Runner's Take. But for now, I think everyone's here for Bad Runner's Take, but we'll see.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Hey, Josh. This is Colby, a 5th grade teacher in Michigan and runner. Just wondered if you ever thought that maybe runners, Borderlands Podcast, if we ever talk about shoes too much. Like if we spent a third of the time focusing on training, diet, other types of things besides just what we put on our feet, if we would all be happier and better runners. I know some people really need specific shoes, but I think for a large percentage of runners, they could probably run in 80% of the shoes out there. Just kind of throwing that percent out there. But let me know what you think. Are we talking too much about shoes? Are we too focused on shoes? Shoes.
Thanks, Colby. I like Colby a lot. He's a great follow, especially if you have kids. On Instagram, he does like book content, and he's a 5th grade teacher himself. Just a great guy. I really like him. He's been on the podcast before, early on. And Colby, yes. I mean, I think that we can obsess. Okay, I'm going to put it in this, say shoes, yes. But also like we put things in front of our running and allow them to be, and we give them more importance than they deserve. Shoes can be that. Nutrition can be that. Not being signed up for a race can do that. And I think Wolfie's World that just released today talks about like all the excuses that we can make and the things that we can keep from doing that. But yes, I like shoes from a perspective. I like to talk about them from design. I like having my friend Taylor on to talk about them from function. But I hear what you're saying, and I largely agree in as much as if we're doing it to keep us from doing what they're to be used for, then yes. What do you think?
Absolutely agree. The conversation's fine, but I think it's when that conversation and that volume of white noise around shoes elevates the runner to think that the shoe is an important part of their success in the sport of running. And it doesn't matter, like Colby says, whether you pick the right shoe, the wrong shoe, the middle, shoe, whatever. Like, this is Goldilocks. Like, everything's going to work, right, in the market. Like, the technology has improved so much that, like, trust yourself as the runner that, it's you that's powering those shoes and the technology with inside of it.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that the story here, Decathlon in Paris, that sells trail running shoes for $80, those could get me through a 100-miler.
Right.
It's fun to geek out on it, but I'm with you, Colby, and I like that, and I appreciate your call. All right, Jordan from Texas.
Hey, Josh. Jordan from Texas here. Been listening to the show for a little bit. Really dig it. Really dig the insightful work that you've been doing. Just wanted to call in with my bad runner's take, which I think you may disagree with. I like what Satisfy is doing from, like, a design standpoint, and I get the whole, like, high fashion meets running. Like, I really like all that they do from that, but I don't know, something about, like, co-opting the, like, punk rock, skate, dirtbag culture for just, like, the, like, vibes and, like, profit feels, I guess, like, strange to me. Like, I think you can either do high fashion meets running, or you can do punk skate culture meets running, but doing both feels kind of like the antithesis of one of them, right? Like, Tony Hawk didn't make Pro Skater and sell it for $700. He made it and sold it for what a video game costs, so that people who skate could buy it and play it. Interested to hear your thoughts. Maybe you can change my mind. I'm not sure. Thanks again for everything. Hope you get something good out of this.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Interesting, and I would say that that's probably, like, been swirling around in the cocktail as I think about them. But do you have any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think in high fashion, like, they're always going to pull from maybe some inspiration that isn't as cohesive with, like, the price point of the culture that it's pulling from, right? Like, there's a lot of fashion houses, right, where you see stuff that comes out and you're like, my God, that looks like it's pulled from, some, like, homeless guy or something, right? Like, there's a lot of fashion that you kind of scratch.
Derelict, right? From Zoolander.
Yeah. So, I mean, I totally get that. And that's why I think there's, again, a lot more problem when Satisfy. So here's the thing. Satisfy was always something that was embraced by people that understood what it was. And, it was essentially made for them, right? Like, if you knew, you knew type thing of Satisfy. Like, you had to seek it out. And so you were in areas where, like, that type of thing wouldn't turn you off. Now, as they're scaling up, they're scaling into people who have differences of opinions. They don't, come from this idea of understanding, like, what it is and the price point, and they're more irked by things that the early adopters, it was irrelevant at the time. So yeah, it's a valid point. It's something that's going to be a growing pain for Satisfy. I don't know how they're going to square that round peg is, I don't know how it's going to work.
Yeah. And Jordan, I hear that, like, it's weird to say, like, okay, if you draw all of these as circles, trail running, skateboarding, and luxury fashion, Satisfy presents itself as the overlap of all of those three. I hear you. There would be nothing in my day of skateboarding. There would have been nothing that fit. Oh, there was any overlap with luxury. In defense of Satisfy, I'll say, since I'm living in Paris and starting to understand it more and more being here, is that it's just sort of ingrained in Paris to be beauty is ingrained. And that's one of the things I like about being here. But then to position it from a marketing standpoint as luxury. Yeah. I mean, this is where I'm saying, like, I feel like Satisfy is becoming a caricature of itself. And a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing in their marketing feels more like cosplay than it feels like authenticity. And that's going to be a problem for them ongoing.
Quick plug for Wolfie's World, Jordan. Go check out.
Please. Yes.
Today, I dive into, the response that Satisfy had to the Nike lookalike Moth Tech. So give it a listen.
Yeah. Don't miss that episode. It's a very insightful episode on that. All right. Andy from Calgary.
Hey, Josh. This is Anna McCollum, Calgary, Canada. Phoning you while I'm driving the car. I'm hands-free. just wanted to give you some feedback. You know, I started trail running about a year ago. I had been pretty lethargic for a number of years. It's been a great journey so far. I've lost 50 pounds. I've been doing a lot of kilometers. It's pretty cold up in Canada right now, so I'm not running too much. But one of the things I wanted to say is that the podcast has been really, it's been great for me. It's been fun. That's kind of what I was looking for getting into this, was wanting to be in trail running, not wanting to be steeped in hyper-competitive content, but really kind of still wanting to get that intro to the sport. I came across your documentary, which is how I came across your podcast, and it really resonated with me. So keep it going, listening to your future Borderlands podcast. I think you're on the right path. I just wanted to give you that encouragement.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, well, so what you see me do even over the last 6 months was like I wanting to infuse my voice more into which is what Bad Runner's Take is into current events. And as Wolfie's world develops and his own voice and what he's doing and, you know, offering his commentary on current events and all this sort of stuff, I just felt like Borderlands was disconnected from current events, and we were too much in like the heart and soul and mind stuff of that. And I feel like I've kind of become a little bit out of balance in focusing on some of this stuff because I had to establish this into the culture of Borderlands. And so now as Wolfie goes off in his direction and builds out his stuff, we come together for Bad Runner's Take and I do my stuff. You know, I really feel like what you're going to see here is a one-stop shop for people exactly like you who, you know, there's a great place to go. Go to Free Trail if you want that like elite, nonstop elite coverage. There it is. You can go have it, and Debo does a great job. But I feel like just about everything else is related to trail running. I think we can serve that up here. But I'm stoked on losing 50 pounds, you know, in a culture where we don't get to just outright celebrate weight loss from this as much as we used to be able to. Like that's massive, especially coming from being lethargic. And if you're feeling good and you're proud of it, like, way to go. That's great.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, big congratulations on that. So stick with it. Hopefully you're a long-term member of the community and listener, so appreciate it.
All right, last one, Chad, SoCal.
Hey guys, this is Chad from SoCal, and I just listened to your buy-sell episode and got a couple of things with Satisfy. I just have a hard time with this company because I love their athletes. I like the vibe. I used to be in the skate, Bones Brigade type stuff. But so they're all about anti-establishment, anti-corporation, but their products are like 3 or 4 times the cost of Rabbit or Path or whatever. So it seems to me it's almost like a fraud. You know, the guys are pushing their, you know, Versteeg and Max and them. They're all kind of the skate vibe, and which I love. But then I look at their products like, oh, cool, I want one of those cool-looking shirts, and it's just outrageous with their shorts and their packs. So anyway, so not super stoked on Satisfy, but, you know, people will spend the money, so they'll probably do well. But and then Aravaipa, I'm looking at them like they're like the Disneyland of ultra running at this point, because I've ran a lot of the races, Cocodona, Aravaipa, or not Aravaipa, Javelina twice. Love Aravaipa, love Jamil, love everything they do for the sport. But $500, you know, over $500 plus $100.
We couldn't have planned this any better.
I think for the tent spot this year, plus all the merchandise they throw out and all that. And I've heard it on podcasts already where people are starting to talk about like it's like it's a money grab and that. So my fear is for Aravaipa that in the future it's going to hurt them because of what they're doing. I mean, to run a point-to-point in Southern California, going through San Bernardino County, LA County, in the AC 100, and the cost of the race is maybe a little over $300. And, you know, the permit's got to be outrageous in Southern California. And then you go Arizona, so it's cheaper to run it. You're doing a loop course with basically four aid stations. You know, perfect. It's an awesome event, but $500 for thousands of people to be running it, plus $117 for the tent spot, which there's only, you know, 300 available, and all that. It's just, you know, it's kind of a mess. So anyway, just a couple takes for you as I was sitting in my sauna listening to you guys. So love the show, and anyway, talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Thanks, Chad. I mean,
so
you would have thought that we would have listened to that before we did the episode.
Yeah.
I think on some levels, people are thinking this way. And with Satisfy, I don't think there's anything else to say there. Chad, I think we probably, said a lot of that. And again, back to Wolfie's World, listen to that. You're going to get a lot of value out of what you were just saying there. And, but your comment on pricing and Disneyland, all that sort of stuff, not lost on me. You're exactly right. And I think that's kind of what we just covered before this call.
Yeah, I got something for Chad, though. Those who, they say those who live in glass houses can't throw stones. Well, those who sit in saunas can't critique Satisfy's price point, right? If you've got a sauna at your house or wherever it is, you clearly are a bit affluent and could afford Satisfy gear if you thought it was worthwhile. So, but,
exactly.
No, I know Chad, so I can give him a little bit
back. Okay,
back.
good.
Yeah, the Aravaipa comparison is spot on. And so it's good to hear that, in some of the other podcasts he's listening to, they're taking some flack too, because that's the only way you're going to get any sort of change, right? So like if the voice of the runner gets heard, we might start seeing some better value coming from these races or something else. But I couldn't agree more. With Satisfy, I'm most annoyed and I feel gutted for Versteeg and Max and the other crew, because again, the way that Satisfy is coming across right now is like they own the culture. They created it. They're responsible for it. And it's not, man. These guys like Versteeg and Max, they existed who they are today before Satisfy. And it's really sounding like Satisfy is trying to claim they've created the image of Versteeg. And it couldn't be any further from the truth. So just
that's a shout out to your episode. And I'll say this kind of as a parting thought. Satisfy is a reflection of Michael Versteeg. Michael Versteeg is not a reflection of Satisfy. And I know that Versteeg and Brice Bartouche are close. Brice is the godfather of Versteeg's child. But, Versteeg, chicken or egg. This is not a chicken or egg conversation. There's no debate that Satisfy tapped into something that existed. And they got to be careful. So anyway, any parting thoughts?
That's it, man. Another great episode. I always feel like after we wrap these things up, we're gonna have a stinker the next week, but we just keep following it up. I think
keep finding stuff.
Yeah, I mean, part of me kind of wishes that I wasn't on the podcast so I could be listening to these things. Yeah. But it's fun to be on this side of the microphone as well. So no, we're good.
All right, man. Well, let's do it again.
Yes, sir.
All right. See you.